Welcome to the Maltepes Show. My name is Matt Maltepes. I'm joined by Rami Khaldi from RK Career Services. If you've ever wondered how to move up in your job, if you're a college student coming out of college looking for a job, if you're looking to advance your career, looking to pick a certain career or choose your career path, well, this is the guy to talk to. Rami Khaldi, thank you for coming here, being here, and introduce us to your day-to-day and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited. I think, first glance, some people might say, you know what, this is not a really interesting topic, but it's a very important topic. So I'm excited. So in my day-to-day, I work at TD Bank. I'm an HR business partner. Typically, I tell people that, and they're like, the hell does that mean? I work directly with business leaders on basically helping them with their HR strategy. I won't dig too much into that, but on the RK Career Services side of things, I started this literally during my winter break, my last week of last year, and I've been in business for, I'd say, about a month. And my goal is really just provide one-on-one support for people that are looking to progress in their careers or just do a better job in their current career. So I'm excited to talk to you about it.
So when it comes to, like you said, careers, and when people are coming out of college, when they're coming out of high school and they're looking, a lot of people don't know what to do. How many times have you seen someone that is coming out of high school, coming out of college, or they drop out, whatever the case is, and they feel like they should do this because everyone's doing it, whether it's going into business or nursing or whatever the case is, but they're not really happy doing it, and society has pressure where you got to figure out what you're going to do. How do you coach these people to find their careers or their passions?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know if I told you, I was a bio major my first year.
No, you did not
for
tell me
one
this.
semester. Really, it was my parents.
Yeah.
Arab parents, man. They want you to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, and if you can do all three, do all three. And I was like, this is not for me.
Welcome to America, baby.
Welcome to America as a minority. So, to your question, though, you want to come out of school, you want to figure out what you want to do. To me, it's an intersection between what's going to make you money, what do you like doing, and what are you good at doing. If you can find something that hits those three, that's a career path, in my opinion. Now, some people may not value the financial side of things as much. Kick that variable out, focus on interests and what you're good at. If you're very organized and you're good at it, could you be a wedding planner or some type of event planner? If you love social media and you're tech savvy and you know how to do digital marketing, could you be someone that's a social media manager? And again, can you build yourself up to make money in that, starting for a company, maybe doing side gigs and so on? To me, if you think about it that way coming out of school, you have to do some diligence and figure out, what am I good at and what do I like? You got to think through those things, because talking to just a college counselor, it's not going to cut it.
So there's something called, I read a book, it's called Ikigai. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Very, very cool book. It's based on a Japanese saying of Ikigai. It's like finding your purpose. And there's a map, actually, I'm going to show you here. And it's like what you love at the top. It's like a diagram. What you are good at, what the world needs, and what you can get paid for. And within that is passion, it's mission, it's profession, and it's vocation. And in the middle is Ikigai. Here, I'm going to show you real quick.
Yeah, let me take a look.
And we'll show the camera too.
That's exactly it. You
Yeah.
see? So I didn't even know you were going to bring this up,
Yeah.
but unintentionally, my own kind of opinion aligns to Ikigai.
Really?
Right?
That's interesting.
Well, I mean, I talk about, what are you good at?
Yeah.
What do you enjoy?
That's why I brought it
Is
up.
there a
Yeah.
financial component to it that can support you long term? The middle point, the intersection, is passion.
Yeah.
So
You got to read the book, man.
I got to read the book. Listen, I just got the book that you and your dad wrote.
Yes.
Time for another book.
Phillybooked.com is the book we have just made. Final copy should be coming through very soon. Pre-orders are now available. So pre-order your book at phillybooked.com. Rags to riches story, a true hero story. Rises, falls, comes back. It's truly inspiring, motivational, and I had a joy of a time creating it. So check it out, phillybook.com. Now back to RK Career Services. So, yeah, this reminded me perfectly with what you said, Ikigai. Ikigai, find your purpose, find what you can get paid for, everything, and Ikigai's in the middle. But that's the hardest thing to do. How do you get to that point where you actually know, okay, well, okay, this is what I love, right? Everybody wants to do what they love, but not everybody can do that. A lot of people are working jobs they don't enjoy, but you got to find how do you monetize from that? And it's a very hard dichotomy there because not all the time is it a high paying career or whatever the case is. How do you manage all four?
You know, it's interesting. So I think depending on what level of freedom you want, and I say that because you can go the gig economy route, which is you work for yourself, or you go the corporate route, which creates a little more stability and more money up front. When you work for yourself, you've got no cap on how much you can make longer term. So I think it depends on your personal priorities. But if you're a high school senior and you have no clue what to do, first thing I'd say is put your phone down, put the Xbox controller down, and go out into the world and get inspired a little bit. You know, talk to people about their passions. Reach out to people on LinkedIn. There's no, not that I know of, there's a minimum age to be on LinkedIn. Something that I was going to talk about later is reach out to people, get to know what they do. If it sounds like an interesting title, ask them what they do in their day-to-day. What are the most important aspects of their job? I did that. I reached out to, when I was in college, trying to figure out, do I want to be pre-med like my parents want me to? Can I pull it off? I can't pull it off. I reached out to like 100 people. I talked to a guy from Minnesota. Random as hell, right? He studied industrial organizational psychology, a specific sliver within that world of psychology. It's ultimately what I ended up studying, and partially it's because I reached out to him. He's like, I get to work with people. I get to help businesses run more efficiently. I get to improve the employee experience, and there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. And I was like, wow, he's making an impact. He's making a great living, and he enjoys when he wakes up in the morning. What else? You know, we talk about it every day, you know? What else do you want? So
That's interesting because I always say, talk to everybody. You never know who you're going to meet. You never know where it's going to lead to. And this is a perfect example of what you just said, where you talked to this guy from Minnesota and then it ended up shaping what you did for life, right? Mm-hmm. Now, based on that, we're in a world where we're becoming more technology dependent. Everybody's on their phones. They don't even see the person in front of them, which is, it can be good, but it can also be bad. And you talked about reach out to people on LinkedIn, but you're also saying talk in person. So we're in an age where I feel like talking to a person is kind of dying, and people want to they'd rather send a text than make a phone call. Yeah. And how do you balance that? Do you think it is dying? And how do people maintain those skills, or how do they get better social skills? And do you think business is actually changing where it's no longer in-person meetings, it's no longer in-person calls, it's more just online, LinkedIn, whatever the case is?
yeah, I mean, look, I think like anything in life, you got to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Whatever it is that you're not good at, but you feel the need to do it or get to a certain point, you got to lean into it. So what do I mean by that? I used to suck at public speaking, man. I would have note cards and I would write verbatim what I want to say, and I would still be nervous and screw up what I want to say. My knees are buckling. My face is turning Sweating. As burgundy as this suit. No. Everything looked like it was just nerve-wracking. I would hear kids sometimes be like, oh, man, he's nervous. He's a little nervous. And what did I do in college? I took a public speaking class, and there were two options, and I have a point. You could do it in a class where it's you solo present or in a group. What do you think is easier?
I'd rather solo present.
I'd
rather, because
agreed.
I do love groups, but what I've noticed is when it comes to groups, especially in a university, not everybody's on the same page. And when you're in a group and you're just standing there and someone else is talking and everybody has their turn to talk, you talk for 5 minutes, the rest of the class, nobody's like, you're really not saying anything, and you're just standing there awkwardly. Whereas once you get through the presentation and you're in the motion, it all goes out the window. You forget.
Exactly.
Is that what you're gonna say?
Well, I was gonna say, like, if I'm nervous, I suck at presenting by myself. The easier route is present it with other people because you might lean on them to take the pressure off the eyeballs
Of course.
in the classroom. So I did what you said. I took the solo route because I
It's a
had
harder
to
route.
challenge myself. I sucked the first couple presentations. Point being, I got to a point where I was doing okay. I was comfortable. I didn't need note cards. I could talk to people. It became conversational. And for people that want to build social skills, use LinkedIn, use social media when it's an opportunity to connect with people and have conversations. But don't endlessly scroll on TikTok and Twitter and
Doom scroll.
Instagram, doom scroll. They call it brain rot when you do it too long. Challenge yourself. Put yourself in settings where you do have to talk. Have you ever heard of Toastmasters?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
So Toastmasters is like a nonprofit that helps people build public speaking skills. It's just one example. There's a lot of different social skills. That's one example where the whole purpose is we're going to help you get better at being comfortable on stage in front of people, talking about something. So if there's someone out there listening, there's Toastmaster chapters everywhere. If you want to do it, all different age ranges, people of different backgrounds, walks of life, that's one way. You got to force yourself to be uncomfortable and do it. And I was going to talk about this a little later, but I just want to tease it. 70% of skills today, job responsibilities today, are going to be automated by 2027.
Artificial intelligence.
AI, machine learning, other advanced technologies. 30% of what's being done today is still going to be relevant in the workplace.
So when it comes to that, what do you think that does for the future of the economy and jobs? What do you think it does for normal people's everyday life? I mean, if many jobs are going to be taken away, how are people going to pay for bills? It's a whole cause and effect chain. But what do you think of that state of our economy going forward?
Yeah, well, let me ask you a question before I answer that.
Please.
When people talk about AI and all this stuff, what do you think people's main concern is when they think about their own future, career-wise?
For career-wise,
Yeah,
their jobs are going to be taken.
exactly.
Of course.
Exactly. They think, I'm not going to have a job,
Yeah.
or there aren't going to be jobs out there for me because everything's going to be taken up.
By robots, this.
And that's not the case. Our population is only growing. And if you think the U.S. is going to let itself get to a point where unemployment skyrockets, it's not going to happen. My opinion, jobs are going to change. And so you're going to have to change. Jobs are going to be less about the mundane administrative tasks. Think about any mundane task that you do in your day-to-day that's admin related, paperwork related. Take that out of the picture. That stuff is going to be done. It's going to be automated. A lot of that's already being done. Higher level work like that is also going to be done. But what can't be replaced by AI? What do you think can't be replaced by AI?
Customer service.
Customer service.
Human interaction, emotional.
Exactly. The soft skills. Empathy, emotional intelligence, collaboration, the ability to have a conscience, the ability. We're humans, we have conscience. AI, all that stuff.
You feel.
Yeah. And so to me, for those that are nervous, look at it as an opportunity to say, how do I build off of my soft skills or build more soft skills so that I'm ready for the future economy when it's less about doing administrative tasks and more about critical thinking, strategic thinking, working with people across different departments to achieve whatever the goal is of your company.
Do you want any donuts?
I do want a donut.
Grab a donut.
I want to grab a donut. What do you want?
Yeah, grab a
We're
donut.
gonna get Alex a few of these after this too.
Come on.
I hope
You
Alex
want a
knows that.
donut?
Whether it's now or later, no pressure. This is for the Maltepes report.
Not bad, not bad. Freshly baked.
Yeah.
Rami, Khaldi, Career Services, RK Career Services. Listen, I have a question. You talked about the human population is growing, whatever the case is. And with that, more jobs obviously are needed. We've had actually, there's been a big national talk around the world where certain countries, and America too, about birth rate not being high enough, what it should be. So if it is not high enough, and we do have it's easy. I'd argue it can be easier to manufacture a machine than convince the world to have more kids. At least America here. What do you think of this whole situation? If you feel like commenting, because this
So,
does directly correlate to what you were saying about the jobs and everything.
and what are these machines doing? They're doing what we as humans would be doing. They're replacing some of that, or what?
No,
What-
not that way. No. What I'm saying is,
I just want to make sure I understand.
you're saying that the population is growing. Well, if our birth rate ends up declining and it keeps on declining, well, eventually we're not going to have as many kids as you would think in a growing population as you believe. If we don't have a growing population as you believe, but the manufacture ring of machines are still going on and going higher, well, then that gap closes.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. That becomes like one of those 90s. There's a movie called AI that I think came out in the 90s, and it was about like a computer parent that takes over for a kid's actual parents. It sounds like a little bit of a science fiction, but
yeah.
you're right, though. They actually. Are you familiar with Kai Cenat, the streamer?
I know of Kai. I don't know him. I don't watch him. I don't. I just know of the name.
I just know of him too, and he bought like a $70,000 machine that like whatever you want to call it. If you kick it, it can get back up, and they're like playing around with it, like they're almost like abusing it. Like it can walk. If you kick it down, it stands up on its own. So, to your question, I think we need to build technology with empathy. I think we need them to understand.
How do you make a machine that feels? And if it does feel, isn't that basically human consciousness? And isn't that dangerous?
I think that's going to take a long time, but the way you do it, and there's actually a really good book. I'll get the name for you. A woman that tries to embed empathy into technology, and the way you do it is the algorithm. Algorithm is just a tool that you feed a bunch of information into, kind of like ChatGPT. You feed it a bunch of information, and it gives you a response. What are the planets in our solar system? Plug that into ChatGPT, it'll give you an answer. How do you interpret different body languages and facial expressions? Build that into the algorithm. If you do it a long enough time, it begins to understand what happiness looks like on your face, or what sadness looks like on my face. And so I hope the birth rates don't slow down continuously. I think down the road, down the road, like not our generation, but our kids and their kids' kids, they may experience that a little bit more. There's already some technology that helps you clean your own house.
Yeah, I know.
So I don't have an exact answer for you, but
It's an interesting topic.
it is a very interesting topic.
And
Sci-fi.
I'm of the opinion we're made in the image of God, however you want to say it, but we're made in the image of God, but we should not be playing God. That's my opinion,
Yeah.
because we are not. Whatever you believe in, but something also to note is, I don't know if you've watched the movie Interstellar, have you?
Great movie.
Amazing. Christopher Nolan did an amazing job. Really? The other day? Oh, wow. So he's actually coming out with a movie called The Odyssey. Not a fan of the cast, but we'll see. Anyways, so in Interstellar, you have the machines and the robots. And Matthew McConaughey, he often
Great
talks to, great actor. He often talks to the machines. And he says, turn your humor level down. Turn your this down. Turn it up. So kind of like you talked about measuring happiness, empathy, measuring these type of human feelings or human emotions, emotional traits, and how you put them into machines and how it interacts with humanity. It's all very interesting. But to continue on the career path, many people often have at least three different careers in their lifetimes. With that being said, how do you know when to switch careers, and what marks that turning point?
Yeah, I think part of it depends on what you're looking for out of life. I know that sounds a little exponential, but like, are you stuck in your career because you want more responsibility? As soon as you feel like your job is easy and boring, time to go. If you're motivated by money and you've hit a wall, we're not going to give you a bonus or a merit increase at the end of the year. Or if you're not getting what you deserve based on what the marketplace dictates, and there's ways to find that out, like Glassdoor.com, time to move. If you're just simply not feeling like you're engaged, where you're having less energy and the day's dragging, there's so many reasons that your mind can say, time to go. It could be a multitude of those reasons. The day that I wake up and I feel like I'm not growing or being challenged, or there isn't like a new stimulus in my job, my mind is going to start going to what else is out there. Yeah. So I think people should always, what's next? People should always ask themselves that question.
Interesting. Now, also, some people are in a certain career and they want to move up. How do you find a balance between asking for a raise or a new job position in whatever career, whatever job you're in, whatever company, or leaving into another company? Because there's a whole thing where if you go to past generations, whether it's baby boomers, whatever the case is, they're more loyal. Nowadays, people are more willing to jump ship. And it does that, definitely has a generational effect in how, you're raised in America. But how do you balance that? And how do you know when to try to look somewhere else? Or how do you know when asking too much is too much, or are you asking for enough? A lot of people are scared to ask for raises. There are a lot of people are scared to ask for promotion. So how do you go through this situation?
Yeah, so I'm going to paint you two scenarios, and I'm curious to see what you say. So
Go Picasso.
One scenario, you work in a corporate role. Let's say you're like a marketing specialist, and you're doing well. Here's the characteristics. You have a good manager. She or he talks to you frequently about how you're doing. They give you development opportunities. They try to compensate you as best as they can. When you have a scenario like that where you like your team, you like your manager, but you know you want more, are you going to look externally, or are you going to ask the question to your manager first? What would your first choice between those two be?
I do both at the same time. I'm a go-getter.
You're a go-getter?
You need to do what benefits you the most, and it depends on, obviously, loyalties, allegiances, and whatever the case is. But let's say no strings attached. I'm doing both. Now, most people, I feel like, would just go to their supervisor first, right?
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to allude to, only because the experience is strong and they've done right by you the whole time. I don't know what everyone would say if you do a poll of 100. If it was me, I'm going to give my company a chance because they haven't failed me in other aspects of my experience. So I'm going to give them a shot, but it doesn't mean they're going to do it for me. Maybe they say no. What's your next option? I'm going to go external. Second scenario, you're doing a great job. You know you're underpaid. You don't really like who you work with. Your manager doesn't really think twice about you. Immediately go external.
Of course.
And that stuff happens, man. I support 26 executives in my company. These are people that have been with the company a long time, smart people. Like they do good work. That's why they're in their jobs. I've had experiences where they leave. I've had experiences where they come to me and they're like, Rami, look, I think I could get this in the marketplace. Like, I'm doing a great job. Look at my performance ratings. I'm like, all right, let's open up the conversation. So to me, I think your manager plays such a big role, man. Like, I know that you're not in the corporate environment. You're a hustler. You're doing all sorts of things. You're your own boss. But for the people listening that are in a corporate job, your manager, I think, influences like 90% of your experience. Yeah. And I think that tells me what route am I going to take, what chance am I going to take, and then what do I do after that? If they don't give me a shot internally to get a promotion, I'm looking outside.
I have a couple things to branch off of that. Yeah. First of which is, the reason I say is to go to both at the same time is because the art of the deal, the art of negotiation. I actually have, I think, the book somewhere, The Art of the Deal, Trump's The Art of the Deal. It's actually a good book, regardless of your beliefs in politics. Nonetheless, I think it's part of negotiation. It's called leverage in negotiation. You got to be able to, if I know this person's going to willing to pay me X, whatever the case is. Well, then I go to my company. I say, look, they're willing to pay me X. I'm working. I have more freedom, more job. Boom, boom. Whatever the details remain. Can you guys match it? Whatever the case is, I don't know. I'm not in a corporate world, but just as a business person and businessman, that's how I would approach it. So, what do you think of that? And how do you master the art of negotiation? And then I have two more little tidbits of info that I'll talk about after.
Yeah, look, I don't disagree with you entirely. I think it's good because you're talking about leverage. Yeah. They're telling me I could get 20K more here. Can you give me 20K more? Or maybe sprinkle a little on top because you know me.
The bonus looking like?
What's the bonus looking like? The inflation is going through the roof. We got tariffs coming in.
Uh-oh.
No, but look, that's
true.
That
They're
ties
all,
into it though, right?
Everything's a factor.
Yeah, so he uses it as leverage and, but anyways, my opinion is it depends on how far you go into that external opportunity. Do you have an offer letter in your hand where you're almost threatening the company to say, look, give me this or I'm out? Or are you saying, look, I've talked to a couple people that do my job elsewhere and they're telling me I'm here and I could be there, where it's more of like a soft conversation? The reason I would say go that second route, if you're having a good experience at your company, you're showing loyalty and you're showing that you're not purely motivated by money where you almost have them in a chokehold to say, give me this or I'm out. You want them to know that they're doing it for the right reasons too, like.
But what if that leverage, real quick, is you get more freedom, family time? What if it's certain things like that that aren't money motivated? It's more about just like life, family, culture, whatever the case is. So it's not always purely money motivated. Well, how about those situations?
It's a good question. My thoughts are, how well have you communicated that to the company in the first place? If that's been an issue, look, and the reason I have opinions on this is because I'm facing off with the people that are asking these kinds of questions. These are all really good questions. They're coming to me and they're like, Rami, you're my HR partner, and like, I want to stay. I'm like, okay, well, did you tell me this a month ago? We can talk about it now, but are they putting me in a chokehold where it's, you got to do this for me now or else? We may keep them because they're great at what they do, but in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, wow, the way they conduct the business, they're doing business, the way they conduct it, does that really show me that he or she is really bought into what we're trying to do? And now that might be the bias on me kind of representing the company, and a lot of people are listening, like, oh, HR, like, they're not for the people, they're for the company. We're for both. To me, how you conduct business is just as important as conducting business in general. So, but again, I think this all starts from, what's your experience? To me, when someone's telling me the company's treating me wrong, my manager's treating me wrong, I think you get a pass to do what's right for you. But my 2 cents is, the way I would handle it myself is, if the company's doing right by me, I'm going to give them
Benefit of the doubt.
the benefit of the doubt. But if they do me dirty, I'm going to look elsewhere. Yeah. Simple as that.
So I once knew somebody that owned businesses, many businesses, and he said, Matt, I don't like great workers. I was like, huh, you don't like great workers? He's like, no, I like good workers. Because good workers get the job done, but great workers, they end up leaving to do better things. Good workers, they stay, they do their job, do it good, and they're loyal. You don't want a bad worker, you don't want a great worker, but you want a good worker. What do you think of that? I'm just very curious.
Well, he's saying that because he wants to benefit from those workers.
Yeah, as an owner, of course.
As an owner.
It's different.
Which I get. I think this is tough because you're going to conflict the business output versus what's best for others. Yeah. And I forget where I heard it.
But it all relates.
But I heard something along the lines of, the more you benefit others, the more plentiful that benefit comes back to you. Something along those lines. I think an entrepreneur was talking about, when you make poor people rich, you're going to become wealthy.
Yeah, it's your circle.
Right? So to me, and it happens in my company too, for example, I support the retail side of TD, the branches. A manager really loves this guy who's like a up-and-coming star. The bad manager is going to keep him and limit his potential. The great manager is going to let him spread his wings and max out. And then you're going to have another opportunity to do that fresh. So my opinion is, it's kind of like a coaching tree in the NFL. We talk about like the Bill Belichick tree. Where do all his coordinators go? They go to other teams and they thrive. Whatever those statistics are. I think as an entrepreneur, you got to do the same thing. Build a tree of people that you've coached, taught, learned under your wing. Let them do their own thing.
Do you think, first of all, you're right. When you talked about making poor people rich, you talked about your network. Your network is very important. I'm going to get back to that in a second. But what I just talked about, how good people, I like good workers, I don't like great workers, they jump ship, leave. Do you think that plays a factor into a lot of people feeling unhappy in the workplace? Do you think that plays a factor in some people? Like, I know I'm going to interview someone soon, very soon. Some people I know, he used to work at BlackRock. He ended up quitting his job because he wasn't happy. You know, he felt like his life wasn't where he wanted it to be. He was making very good money, but it wasn't who he was. And he ended up then he traveled across the country, the world, boom, boom, did all these different things, amazing things, which is awesome. And he lived his life. And now he's a life coach, right? So I'll get to that interview soon. You'll see in a couple of weeks. But how does that play in the workplace? And how do you talk to people that are going through those situations? Because a lot of people are going through those situations where they're unhappy, whatever the case is.
Yeah, when COVID hit, everyone started working from home, and they saw the benefits. I'm with my kids. Childcare costs go out the window. I'm not commuting an hour each way. I'm paying less gas. If you work in another state and the taxes are different, you have to pay a portion of your taxes in that other state. I think about Philly and Jersey and Philly. A lot of benefits came from that. So what happened? To your point, we're talking about work-life balance. We're talking about freedom. We're talking about flexibility. That became an expectation. I was doing a little research because, I don't want to look like a schmuck in front of everyone. I saw...
You're looking too sharp, my man, to look like a schmuck.
Ron Burgundy.
Ron Burgundy.
Rami Burgundy.
Rami Burgundy.
So I was looking into it the other day. So about 70% of U.S. Citizens want a hybrid job. Only 30% of jobs provide that opportunity. So companies, as we speak, the BlackRocks of the world, every industry, it's not just banking, it's not just marketing, it's everything. They're looking to appease to the people. People had some power coming out of COVID because companies, to be competitive and get the best talent, they have to make life easier on the people they're hiring. So if you were on site 5 days a week, maybe we give you Friday off. You work Monday to Thursday in the office, Friday from home. So I think it's still early, man. Like, you think about humanity, it's been a few years since COVID, which is crazy.
5 almost.
Several.
Crazy. Time's going by fast.
Dude, I don't even know how old I am at this point. But going back to your question, companies are going to be challenged to continuously ask, how do we make life easier? Benefits, retirement matching, PTO, time for you to just do your own thing, vacations, travel, whatever. That trend is only going to grow. More companies are going to provide those perks. The ones that fall behind it's going to be a steep drop-off.
You talked about workers working from home and hybrid working. What do you think of that whole situation? Do you are you of the belief that it hurts worker effectiveness? Because that's just a big debate going on with America and different people, government, jobs especially. They say things don't get done as fast as they can, as fast as they should, and they're not as effective and efficient when they work from home. Do you believe that's true?
I personally don't, and I'll tell you why.
Really?
Statistically, I don't know the exact number, but I remember reading it. Statistically, production has improved. And there's a theory around when you have, and I'm going to give you a real example. There's a theory that the amount of time that you have to achieve a task, most humans will use up that entire time. For example, I give you a project. I say, Matt, you got 2 weeks to get this done.
Finish it.
Most people, not you, because you're a high achiever, Matt. You do great
I don't
work.
know if I'm a high achiever, but
Most people are going to take the whole 2 weeks. If you give them 1 week, are they going to do it in 2 weeks or are they going to do it in 1 week?
1 week
If you give them a day,
timeline,
they're going to work their ass off to get it done in one day.
unreal expectations,
Unreal expectations.
but it produces faster and better results.
So, to your point, when you apply that to a real world concept at my company, we did not have the resources to let as many employees work remote when COVID hit. It was a timeline of, oh, multiple years down the road, we're going to get to that capability where X amount of people can work remote because there's a lot of technology and firewall and VPN access, whatever, to make it happen. We made it happen in 2 weeks. Because what happens if you don't? You're not allowed to come into the office. You're going to contract COVID from someone
Yeah.
potentially. And what are we going to do? Not have people work? Have 50% of our people that need to be on a laptop not work? No. They got it done in 3 weeks.
Interesting.
So when you need to get shit done,
You get it
have
done.
that urgency, you get it done. Otherwise, it's your livelihood. So going back to the remote work and all that, if you're at a company that holds you accountable, your production's not going down. And if anything, you're around your laptop in a home all the time. Not that you should work like excessively because you have a life, but you're more likely to be dialed in. I think partially depends on your personality. Some people thrive
In a workplace.
person, around people, face to face. So there's a portion of it that really depends on the individual. But overall, production's better.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a good and interesting take because I haven't heard that take many times. And I'm actually personally a person that likes in person. I like everything in person. I'd rather not text, call me. I'd rather meet in person, all of those different things. That's how I am. Everybody's different, like you said. Now, previously we talked about network. How important is your network, number one? And second of all, how do you build your network?
Yeah, this is so important. So I'm gonna hit you with a quick fact, and then I'm gonna go into that question.
Please.
So
Bring it on, bring it on.
this baffled me. 70% of jobs are in the hidden market. Hidden market is when you get an internal promotion, a job's never posted, you're doing great, Matt, we're gonna bring you up to the next level. It's a referral where you know someone, they're coming out with a finance degree, there's a financial analyst job open, we're not gonna post that job. I know this guy coming out of UPenn, bright kid, we're gonna give him the job. It comes from opportunities that don't post the job for the masses to apply to. Networking. Why is networking so important? When you get to know someone like you talked about, and to me that's the theme of who you are. You love people, you love getting to, we talked about it last night, getting to know different cultures, different people. When you network, you're going through the back door to get an opportunity, not through nepotism, not through cheating or anything, but you build a relationship with someone that's high up in an organization. They get to know you at a personal level. When you apply for a posting, they're seeing who you are and everything you come with on a resume. And it's tough to really gauge who you are and get to know you at a deep level through a piece of paper, you know? So if you're in college and you're struggling to get an internship, or if you're looking to get a job out of school and have it lined up as soon as you graduate, network.
How do you
Challenge.
network?
Challenge yourself to meet new people. LinkedIn, I talked about it earlier. I reached out to random people. And it was easy because it's not like I was introducing myself face to face. I'm sending a DM. I'm saying, look, my name is Rami. I'm a little conflicted about what I want to study. I think industrial organizational psychology appeals to me. I'd love to just pick your brain about it for 30 minutes if you have time in the next couple weeks. Takes a couple days, responds to me. Rami, thanks for reaching out. Probably took a lot for you to do this for a random person. Let's set up some time. And it's a challenge because, to your point, you pick up the phone, you call someone. People nowadays, they love to text. People that I work with are all older than I am. They love to pick up the phone and talk. And they're like
me.
They're like, yeah, man, look, I think you're an old soul. I kind of get described as that sometimes. Like I'm
Many times.
a 50-year-old in a 29-year-old body, which sounds kind of weird, but that's why I listen to Sinatra.
So do I.
But you can't just text your way to an opportunity. You gotta build relationships. LinkedIn, In college, there's so many clubs. I'm not talking about the parties and frats. I'm talking about if you're a finance major, you're going to have a finance club at your school. If you're interested in HR, I was in like an HR club, which sounds kind of dorky, but you meet professionals, they bring in people, and guess what they do? They network. They talk to you about their job, they talk to you about corporate life, and then there's a networking session. They bring in other people. You got to do those kinds of things to be competitive in the marketplace because 2025, I'm telling you, unemployment is really low. So what does that mean? Less jobs. There's a lot of people looking for jobs right now. 60% of individuals in the workforce globally are looking for a new job in 25. So more people are applying and there's less opportunity. You got to network to make yourself stand out.
So talking about jobs, right? Rami, Khaldi, RK Career Services. You talked about resume writing. When it comes to your resume, so we had a lot of talk about a lot of people are looking, for jobs. You talked about resume. It's hard to really gauge with a resume and hard to understand what a person is about, who they are. There's a heavy debate on pictures on resumes. There's a heavy debate on what you should list, what you should not. Should it be more than a page? Should it be two? And then there's a heavy debate on what is the most important thing? What do you want them to see right away? Experience? Do you want to see college? Do you want this? How do you build a resume to maximize effectiveness with whoever you send it to?
Yeah. Have you ever heard of an ATS?
Talk to me.
Applicant tracking system. It's
Yes.
a very complicated way of saying there's a system that scans your resume
Yes.
and says yes or no to
I've
you
seen this, yeah.
before you get to a recruiter or a hiring manager. And I was looking it up yesterday. 20 to 25% of applicants get through that round. So what does that
Third.
mean? So the other 70, 75 get cut off. Why is that? They don't optimize for what the job is looking for. You talked about pictures. Pictures throw off those machines and it almost discredits your resume. Not every time, but in a lot of cases. So am I gonna really push for my face to be on that resume, or am I gonna push for what's gonna get me that interview? I'm gonna push for what's gonna get me to that interview. And I've had a few clients early on, and they've had good content, they just needed to rework it. Yeah. So you go back to what do they need to see? You gotta have a summary at the top. If you don't have a summary and it's just bullet points around what you do, that's your one opportunity to really describe who you are. That's the one component on that piece of paper where they get to know who are you. So you gotta have a summary. And the biggest flaw I see in resumes is, and I'll ask you this, would you rather someone talk about the output they've produced or just copy and paste what a job description says? What do you think stands out to people?
I want to see your output. I want to see experience. I want to see what you've done.
Exactly. So my number one recommendation to anyone that's listening is quantify what you've produced. If you made a huge impact on a project, if you increased sales by 20%, do that instead of talking about I drive sales for X company. You know what I mean? That's the kind of stuff that's going to make you stand out because everyone else is copying and pasting what a job description says, and that's not the way to do it.
Okay. So the most important thing on a resume is not your summary, although very important, summarize who you are. It's your experience in quantifying what you're doing. Put it in a measurable way. Okay. Now, when it comes to your college, when it comes to your graduation, when it comes to where you went to school, many people say, oh, well, I went to this Ivy League school, and they try to brag, whatever the case is. Do you find that more important, or do you find experience more important?
It's a good question.
And what are the deciding factors between different applicants? After you get through that first stage of the tracking system, when someone actually looks at it, what is the difference maker?
Yeah, it's a good question. So when you're fresh out of school, do you have a lot of real-world experience? Typically, you don't have a lot of real-world experience in the field that you're working in. Maybe you have one internship. What they recommend, and what I also recommend, is throw your education at the top when you're a new grad and your experience is low, because that's going to be what stands out to you. You being a busboy somewhere, shows that you hustle. It shows that you're working. If you work at a sandwich shop, yeah, you're working while in school. That shows that there's a little bit of hustle. But your education plays a big role. What did you study? What was your GPA? Include your GPA if it's above 3.5. If you have a lower GPA, and look, I'll be honest, my GPA was low in undergrad. It was like in the low to mid threes, like 3.3 or something. I didn't include it. I didn't throw it on there. In grad school, I had a higher one. I threw that in. Include your education when you're a new grad. Once you have about 3 to 5 years plus experience, move the education down, shift the experience up. Because the ATS is going to look top to bottom, and it's going to look for relevance to the job. A recruiter, if it's not a system, a recruiter, a human, is going to scan it for 20 seconds. They're going to look top to bottom, and they're going to see, do you have what it takes for this job? So that's my recommendation.
So for me, real quick.
Yeah.
So let's say you're creating a resume for me.
Yeah.
We'll have you create one,
I'll do it.
please. I don't know if I'm going to use it, but I'd love to
You don't
have
need
it.
it.
I'd love to have it. So if I told you, well, I own a sports information company, sports consulting, right? I have the World News Media brand, the Maltepes Report, in which you can see here, bringing the world to you, World News Media, and I have a show, a podcast on it on X. We tweet out all the breaking news from around the world. I've been on countless shows, ESPN, I've been on Fox, whatever the case is. I was on Sirius Radio, numerous different things, right? Programs. I'm working coffee distribution. I've helped my father with his company. So I've done a lot of different things, right? And then I've also done stuff on the side, extracurricular stuff when it comes to Dolce & Gabbana, whatever the case is. Now, how do you prioritize when, like, we talked about whether it should be one page, should it be two? How do you prioritize what you should put on the page? And do you go past that first page? Because it's hard, let's say for someone like me, to put that all within a reasonable frame of work.
Yeah. So when I have a client, a potential customer who's like, Rami, I think you might be able to help me. I'm not sure. I always do a consult, 30 minutes. Tell me about yourself. Tell me what you're after. My first question for you, if you reached out to me, RK Career Services, I would say, Matt, what's the job you're looking for? What's the opportunity that you're looking for? And that is what I would start with. I'm a big fan of reverse engineer. I'm not going to do what I think makes sense. I'm going to do what works for the system that my resume is going to go through. Because that's what's going to get me a face-to-face interaction or a phone interaction or over a webcam to get interviewed. And that's where I'm going to shine. That's where you're going to shine. So I'm going to ask you, Matt, what's the opportunity you're chasing? And that's going to influence my strategic approach to your resume. Put the Dolce & Gabbana up top because you're chasing an opportunity to design a runway show. You're pursuing, creating your own new sports betting app. Put the sports betting sports information company experience at the top and mention it in your summary. Oh, you're after partnering with someone in South America to create a larger coffee distribution chain. Put your coffee experience at the top and speak to what you've done in that area, in that arena, to validate why you deserve that opportunity. So those are the kinds of conversations I'm having with customers or clients, whatever you want to call them. And I'm asking, what kinds of specific roles are you after? And if they can't answer that for me, my first response to that is, you need to figure that out. Because I'm not going to tell you what kinds of positions you need. I can give you my opinion. Going back to your first question, what are your interests? What are your strengths? And what level of financial opportunities are you seeking? I'll give you my opinion on what kinds of jobs. But if you don't have that answer, I need that answer. And then I'll make sure your resume is ready for it.
And when people talk about gaps in your timeline in your resumes and stuff, how does that play a factor? And how do you play that situation? For example, let's say there's a gap in my history where I was working on the foundations of one of my companies, whatever the case is, right? But there's not a way to measure it in terms of, well, this year's I did this, but nothing was accomplished because you're building frameworks and ground seeds. How do you manage that?
Yeah. So if there's a gap in your resume, how do you kind of help people understand that?
Leave
It's
it
a,
out.
yeah, I would I would be transparent. I would include a career gap. I would figure out exactly how to phrase it, but I would explain briefly what the career gap is relating to. Now, the ATS may pick it up, but if a recruiter sees it and you get that face-to-face interaction, you can explain the why to them. As long as the experience before and after it is relevant, and depending on how competitive that specific opportunity is, maybe they pass on you because you just don't have the experience, and that stopgap would have helped if you had those additional 1, 2, 3 years. But if you get an opportunity to get face to face, be transparent. I took a year off for XYZ. I had to take care of a family member and I couldn't work. I think going back to what does AI do versus what do we do, there's conscience on the other side. And a good recruiter or a good hiring manager is going to have some empathy for whatever your reason is.
How do you master interviews?
This is a good one. There's a few tips. You got to be prepared. You don't wing interviews. I tell everyone. My fiance's been searching for new jobs, and she's been doing really good and improving every facet of the
Congrats, by the way.
experience. Thank you. Everything from resume to learning about the company to understanding the role. The way you interview well is you know what they're looking for. I talked about reverse engineer your resume, reverse engineer what you expect them to ask you. So beyond that, make eye contact. If I stray away from you right now and I'm staring at the corner of the wall, people that are watching are thinking, is there a fly in the corner? Like, why is he not looking at the host? Make eye contact, show that you're engaged. Your body language tells a lot. If I'm hunched over, if I'm finicky, I don't have good posture, they may think, what other things are going to translate into his workplace based off his body language? Is he not going to be engaged? Is he going to be nervous? And his job has to do with collaborating with other people. So good body language, good tone, good eye contact, and then prepare. The better read you have on the questions they're going to ask you and the concise answers you give them, if you do those things, you'll stand out compared to the other people that aren't doing all of those.
To go back on your point about body language, I've read that 70 to 90% of what someone feels, what they think, or what they want to express is always said through body language.
Yes. So really quickly, it's funny. So I was with Laura at the Spy Museum in Washington D.C. I didn't know they had a spy museum.
Yeah.
It's actually really cool. The highest level had cars for the cars that James Bond drove
Wow.
in the 007 movies.
That's pretty cool.
And there was like different.
James Bond's awesome, by the way.
What a guy, If
Awesome
I could,
series, books, everything.
yeah, dude. We need to bring back his look to today.
Yeah, I know.
But anyways, first we need an Aston Martin. But
Soon, okay? Soon.
Listen, I'm gonna help you get that resume. You're gonna get that Aston Martin.
I need that resume.
We're gonna get Alex. Alex, what car would you want if you could choose any car?
Urus.
I'm just curious.
The Urus.
You want the Urus? That's a hell of a car, man.
No, we
That's
saw it driving the one day. He's like, that's my dream car.
Oh man, I could see you in maybe I'll give you the burgundy suit and you'll pull out the whole. But going back to the point I was trying to make, in the Spy Museum, they had different modules as you go through it because you're pretending to be a spy and you're trying to solve a case. One module is all about body language, and they said something similar. On the screen, it said something like, body language gives all the signs of when you're interrogating someone. You shrug your shoulders, or your eyes wander, or your voice shakes a little bit when you're talking, or you play around with your hands and you fidget. You're right. The same principles apply to an interviewer and an interviewee. And if you don't show up with confidence, not cockiness, but confidence, then someone else might, and they'll trust them with those responsibilities that come with that job. Especially if you're going after a promotion, it's a bigger job. There's more risk when you don't do your job well for that company. You got to show up with strong body language. It's going to tell an entirely different story from what you say if there's a disconnect.
So that's the second stage, right? So you have first stage, resumes and whatever the case is, trying to get through the systems. Yeah. And then the second stage is when you get into those interviews, and how do you perform in these interviews? Like you said, body language, very important, and be confident. and be in the moment and actually talk to the person, look them in the eye. The third stage. What is the third stage?
So that's typically like a final round, man. The final round is going to be anywhere between 2 to 5 people. So these are the people that have the experience. They meet the minimum qualifications, but also stand out amongst the larger group of 50 to 100 people that apply. You get maybe 20 of those go through. The interviews show that you know how to talk to someone. You can speak to your story and your career journey. And now you're getting down to the nitty gritty of there's 2 other people besides me interviewing potentially. Now you sell them. You got to sell the manager and tell them this is why it's me, not Joe Schmo that's also in the running.
The difference.
The difference. To me, this is where you talk about the best skills that you have that align to the job.
How do stories relate? If we get to that round and we're talking about the difference between different people, let's say I tell a story about how I started working at 8 years old. I was making pizzas. I've been in business my whole life. I've been in meetings with high executives since I was a kid to now, whatever the case is. Do you tell any stories? Do you have any go-to points in certain areas like that? Does that make a difference?
Yeah, I think it does. I think there's always variability when it comes to a human interaction because everyone is so different. If you have some insight into what that person is like, that hiring manager who's deciding between you and one other person, do they like numbers? Do they like stories? Do you know what they're looking for in that opportunity? I think that applies more so for internal roles. If you have an opportunity to network or you know someone that knows that manager, what else can you find out about them? Do you know what the one thing is that they need from this person in this job that the last person couldn't do? I'm going to talk to that. My default, if I'm applying to another company, let's say it's BlackRock, because you mentioned BlackRock earlier, I'm going to sell them on like the high level theme. What's my vision for this role? Am I going to focus on maybe the person before me sucked at developing people? I'm going to tell them, I'm going to spend concerted time getting this team built from scratch, and I'm going to get them functioning as best as possible, and you're never going to have to think twice about, can I lead this team? I think about like vision statements. Companies have vision statements, right? You probably have your own. It's really like your own core belief. What's that vision for you as an entrepreneur? If you can create a vision like that for them, it's going to sell them on who you are, starting at the top with your core values, and it's going to work its way into every last thing that you do. The way you wake up, the way you lead through difficult times, the way you lead when change in the organization is happening. If you can create, and I know this sounds a little cheesy, it does, but if you can sell them on who you are as a person, you'll sell them on who you are in X business title, whatever the job is.
Yeah, that's why I was interested with the story part because I feel like you can convey who you are through stories. And who doesn't love a great story? So, real quick shout out to my producer, my cousin, Alexander Cruz. He is the man, the best. He produces the shows and edits them every single time we have a show. And he's also the producer for the Locked In podcast with Jove Pfeiffer and Sam Oropeza. Now, if you guys want to work with Alex, you guys want to get in contact with him, you can contact the Maltepes Report. You can contact him. He'll be listed in the bio, the credits. And then you can also contact me at Matt Maltepes. So, one more thing I have to talk to you about. A lot of people have rules when it comes to business, right? So, and I'm going to explain this in a second. So, there are people who say it's time to shut out all business. It's 10 p.m. They shut down all business, shut off all calls, whatever the case is. Do you have a time limit in which you cut things off? Let's say 10 p.m. After 10 p.m., I don't answer phone calls. I wake up the next morning, I do it over.
It's a great question. And unfortunately, it's going to sound a little redundant, but I think it depends, man. Some days, and look, what's his name? Alex Hormozy, I think his name.
I don't know.
He has a book called $100 Million Deal or something like that. He's an entrepreneur. He created a network of gyms, and he created a website called acquisitions.com that helps businesses grow. and he works his ass off. Like in a podcast, he said, I take like 5 days off a year. And he went on a vacation for like 2 days, and he got bored in the first day, went home and started working again. Like, that's just who he is. If you have that drive and the goal that you have for yourself is strong enough and the work is fulfilling, do it. As long as it balances with your other aspects of your life, whether it's your relationship, your family, if you can make that work for you, great. Personally, there's days where, I'll work my 9 to 5, I'll go to the gym, and I'll work on making RK Career Services better. Other days, I tell myself, you know what, Rami, you work to live, you don't live to work. And so you got to know when that cutoff is for yourself. So some days.
I said that on my last podcast, by the way.
Did you? Yeah. Okay. Hey, great minds.
I think alike.
Think alike. So I think it depends. Some days I'll push myself because otherwise I'll look back with regret, and I'll have no reason to make excuses. I think everyone is a collection of their decisions on their back. That's what leads to where you are. I really believe that. So there's days where I'll push myself on the weekends and at nights when I could be watching TV or scrolling on my phone. Other days I'm like, you know what, Rami, to be better the next day, chill for a couple hours, just relax, watch a good show. One of my favorite shows is The Penguin on HBO.
I saw it. Great show.
Great freaking show,
Great
man.
show. Colin Farrell.
Amazing.
You don't even recognize as Colin Farrell. He becomes the Penguin, by the way. Like, you don't know him as any other person. You don't know him. Usually, if Matt McConaughey is in a movie, you know it's Matt McConaughey.
Right.
But in this specific show, with all the makeup, everything, I have to give him his credit. Colin Farrell, amazing job. Dude, you were phenomenal. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's a great point. I mean, no one took a role as strongly as him compared until I could think back about the Joker and the Dark Knight. But anyways,
Reminds me of Tony Soprano, by the way.
man, R.I.P. But yeah, I think it depends. If you have big goals and you're working a 9 to 5 like a lot of us, including me, and I'm trying to do this on the side, you have to push yourself to be uncomfortable and push past your limit. If you say, I shut everything off at 5 p.m., guess what? You're not going to get to where you want by shutting things off at 5 p.m. and taking every weekend off. Entrepreneurs like you and others that have built great businesses and drive Uruses like Alex in the future, you do the things you need to get there. So to me, it depends on the day, but you can't have a cutoff every single day if you have bigger dreams and goals. You got to push yourself.
So I know a story of this guy. He had a multi-million-dollar deal on the table, and he almost secured it. He was about to secure it. Now, it was between him and someone else whether the deal would go through with this guy. This guy was really in the lead getting this deal, multi-million-dollar deal. Let's say it's Joe and Mike, for example. Joe was leading. The guy loved him, loved his personality, loved who he was. He was sold. But Joe would shut off his phone at 10 p.m. every day. That's the reason I asked this. The other guy said, I love you, Joe. You're amazing, and you do well for yourself. You're going to do well for others. But I need someone I can rely on at any time and any moment. When I need something, they need to be there. So he ended up going with Mike, because Mike, after 10 p.m., he was on the phone. He was making the calls. So that's exactly why I asked this question. And something I want to point out is you talked about the interviews and understanding the interviewer, final round, understanding yourself. And when it comes to, let's say, a deal like this, right, for example, you got to know yourself and know the other person. The Art of War, great book, perfect for business, one of my favorite books ever. Sun Tzu has a line, know thyself, know thy enemy, 1,000 battles, 1,000 victories. Very powerful, and it goes for whether you're really talking about war, it goes for business, it goes for so many different aspects. But I feel like that perfectly captures the essence of the mindset you need going into whether it's an interview or it's a business deal, it's negotiation. And I thought it was just a perfect story to relate to what you talked about in terms of shutting off at 10 p.m.
Yeah.
Or whatever the case is.
I love that quote. I think it speaks to like the veracity you need to have, especially for the people that are listening. If you're working in a corporate environment and you simply want to just climb the corporate ladder, you may not have to do all that additional stuff. Maybe you work a few extra hours here and there. But if you are looking to grow one business or build multiple businesses, that guy won because he's ready to do it. He knows that what it takes, and that doesn't, stick to a specific timeline. So I think that's a great way to wrap things up, man. I love it.
That's awesome. Now, where can we reach you on social media? Where can we reach you, Rami Khaldi?
Yeah.
How do we reach RK Career Services for anyone that is interested, whether you have need or help in your resume writing, cover letter writing, interview preparation, or just career coaching in general? Go to RK Career Services. Where can they reach you, Rami?
Yep, you can find me on Instagram, Rami Career Coach. You can email me, and I'll give you my information if you want to plug it in when you post. And I'm super flexible, man. Whether you want to call me, email me, DM me on Instagram, hell, follow me on LinkedIn. Reach me in a multitude of ways. We'll get you the information, and reach out. Don't be shy. Even if it's just to pick my brain on a couple of things. I like to do consult. Reach out to me.
And what's the most important thing for everybody to hear? One last thing.
Yeah. Be yourself. It's super cheesy, but be yourself because again, the thing that humans have is conscience. They know how to read people. They're not looking for you to act like someone else or try to fit a mold to be someone else. Be authentic. Anytime you show up for an interview, anytime you show up for a networking session, be yourself, because they're going to hire you not for what you can do, but for who you are. That's my last piece of advice.
Thank you very much, Rami. Thank you for the donuts.
Of course.
Thank you for coming here. Thank you for the episode. One last question, then we're going to wrap up.
Bird.
I see the eagle style donuts. Super Bowl is Sunday. This come out after the Super Bowl is done.
I'm dressed like the Chiefs, man.
I know. What are you
the
doing,
hell?
man?
I'm gonna burn this suit.
You got to come in with the green. What are you doing? I need a score prediction. Who's gonna win, and how much? And we'll see if you're right when this comes out.
I feel good, man. This is not like the last Super Bowl. We got Saquon Barkley. We got a good defense. The turf screwed us up in the last one. 37-24 Birds.
Wow, but
Second
13.
Super Bowl in team history. Saquon will be the MVP of that game.
Wow, really?
I think so.
I'm not gonna say it just yet, but MVP Jalen Hurts. I think Jalen gets the MVP just because he can run in. He can also pass it.
Absolutely.
But thank you, Rami. This is awesome. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Amazing
Thank you.
time.
Appreciate it, brother.
Thank you. And you guys can subscribe on YouTube at Maltepes Report. We're at Maltepes Report on every social media platform. Make sure to follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. We also give additional content, breaking news from around the world. We have the podcast. Check us out on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Thank you guys so much. Have a beautiful day.